Hey guys, it's Dr. Ashley Southard here for a new episode of WeighOut Wednesday. I'm coming to you from Scottsdale, Arizona with a new beginning and the Healthy Way Out Emotional and Binge Eating Weight Loss Program. Now, this month's episodes are all about the early childhood emotional roots of your emotional and binge eating, really looking at different aspects of your early life experiences that can later set the stage for the development of emotional and binge eating. So today I want to talk about how growing up in an image-focused environment can actually be a very powerful trigger for something like emotional and binge eating to develop. Now, there's a couple of different ways that a home environment can be image focused. Most of the time, when we use those words image focused, we're talking about the physical image of the family and the family members. So the focus can be on how the family members look in terms of physicality and aesthetics. So this will include things like your physical appearance, your hair, and your weight and your body shape and how you wear your makeup, what clothes you're wearing. So how you are presenting yourself, how you are being perceived, whether you're attractive or not attractive, pretty, handsome. The family will put a lot of emphasis on being deemed attractive and handsome and good looking. And there will be a lot of stress put on the child in that environment to look a certain way, to dress a certain way, to wear their hair a certain way, to present themselves physically in a certain way. And of course, this can very much lead to all different types of strategies the child may need to develop to manage their weight so that it meets the family's image-based needs. Okay? Now, the other way that an environment can be very image focused is if there's a lot of pressure on how you present yourself emotionally and psychologically. So it's not just in how you look, but far too often, what I hear from my clients who are struggling with emotional and binge eating is not only were they expected to maybe look a certain way, but even more importantly, they were expected to feel a certain way. And that certain way was fine. They were expected to be fine all the time. And they were expected to have it all together and to be perceived as very happy, to make it look as if the family unit is very happy and healthy and that each individual member is happy and healthy. But the reality is these children will grow up into adults and reflect on these childhood years and say, I was actually crumbling inside. I was so sad. I felt so alone, so confused, so angry, but I couldn't show any of that. I just had to be fine. And we had to make it look like everything was perfect in our family system when that wasn't the case at all. So there's a lot of pressure to maintain an image of not only a beautiful family, but more often what I hear is to maintain an image of a perfect, happy family where there's no problems. And quite the contrary, what the experience of so many of my clients is that there's actually a significant amount of pain and distress going on in the family system. So there's this image of, the neighbors and the teachers and the friends all think this is like the perfect family and everybody loves everybody. But behind closed doors, there's a very different experience happening for this child. So what happens then to a child emotionally and psychologically when they're in this high pressure image focused environment? Well, what happens is they really have to then abandon their authentic self and they have to become kind of this fake, sense of themselves to fit in with this perfect image that the family expects. So they have to abandon their real emotions, their real needs and wants and feelings and present as fine. So what that will look like then is that they have to detach from things like sadness and anger and loneliness and confusion and fear. They have to detach from any imperfections in their body, and they have to just focus on being fine and trying to look better. Okay, so we can definitely see how that can then later set the stage for disordered eating, for emotional and binge eating, right? It also sets the stage for this sense of self where you don't feel good enough. And I hear that far too often in my office. My clients will say, I just don't feel good enough. And if we trace that back in time, that makes a lot of sense because who you were authentically at your core, it wasn't good enough, or it certainly didn't feel like it was good enough if you are in an image focused environment where your anger is not acceptable, you need to be fine. Where your sadness is not acceptable, you need to be happy. Where your imperfect body is not acceptable and you need to look a certain way. Okay, so it makes a lot of sense that this child internalizes this focus on a perfect image and draws the conclusion that they're somehow insufficient, maybe even defective or flawed, and certainly not good enough. And then all of those feelings of shame and inadequacy stay with you into adulthood. And here you are as an adult feeling all of that shame and not good enoughness. Now, where does that then lead to emotional and binge eating? Well, remember in past videos, I've talked about when children are in an environment where they are feeling a lot of intense emotions, especially distressing emotions like fear and sadness and anger and shame, and nobody is there helping them through those emotions and saying, hey, this is what you're feeling right now, and it's normal for you to be feeling this way. And here's how we can help you through that emotion. If nobody is guiding the child through that emotional process, then all of these emotions are just swirling around inside, creating more confusion and more fear and more chaos. Some clients will describe it as like a pinball machine where, their emotions are just ping-ponging and bouncing all around inside of them, not getting released, not getting metabolized or processed in a healthy way. And so very naturally then, the child needs some kind of outlet to help quell those emotions, to calm them down, even if it's temporary. And the developmentally appropriate drug of choice for a child who's emotionally distressed is food. And food works, as we've talked about in past videos. From a somatic perspective, from a body perspective, food does calm down for a little while, especially snack foods. All right. And from an emotional perspective, it can be soothing and comforting, even though it's temporary. So children, of course, are naturally inclined to turn to food to help them deal with all of these emotions that are getting stirred up inside that nobody is tending to. And they're just supposed to put out this image that they're fine and that everything's great, when really it's very much the opposite on the inside. Okay, so that's how we can see emotional and binge eating later develop for these children who are growing up in these image-focused environments. All right. So, what do we do about this as an adult? If this is resonating with you, if you're reflecting on your home environment thinking, I did have to make it look like everything was fine. I did always have to have it all together, and I was expected to look a certain way, and you're struggling with emotional and binge eating today, well, those make a lot of sense. And the really good news here is that you can absolutely break out of this eating behavior. We have to unlink the food from this image focus. All right. So the very first thing that we want to do is really develop a deep awareness for how your environment was image focused growing up. It's having an appreciation for how much of your authentic self you had to set aside and you had to stuff down to preserve this family image. Now, again, as I've said in these past videos, this is not about blaming parents or vilifying parents or suggesting that your parents were somehow bad or didn't love you. That is not the point of this at all. In fact, I think so many parents are really coming at their parenting from a place of love, only wanting the best for their children, but some of it is misguided and it does have negative effects on the child and their development. So none of this is about blaming parents. It's simply about reflecting on your past and understanding how all of these dynamics fit together and how they impacted you. Okay, you may even have siblings who have a very different experience of your home environment growing up, and that's okay. Yours can still be valid. You are a different, unique person who's going to have a different, unique experience of things. And it may be that your siblings or other family members just experienced it differently, and that's okay. But really taking inventory of how you were expected to maintain a certain image, where you expected to look a certain way through your weight or through your, how you wore your hair or your clothes. And where you also expected to behave or feel a certain way, where you expected to be fine, where you expected to just have it all together. If so, then it sounds like you were raised in an image-focused environment, and we want to have a deep respect and appreciation for all of the different ways in which that was expected of you. The second step then in changing this is starting to get reacquainted with that authentic part of you that you had to detach from as a young person. So this is going to require you to really start to awaken yourself to what you like, what you want, and what you need. Okay, and it's in there. I promise you that authentic self, it doesn't go away. It just kind of gets buried, but it is absolutely in there. So I want you to start asking yourself, what do I really like? And think about that. What activities do you like? How do you want to spend your time? What kind of clothes do you like? How do you want to wear your hair? What are all of the little day-to-day things that you like? Okay, not what do others like, not what should I like, but what do I like? So start to get in touch with that authentic part of you. All right, you can think back to when you were a little kid. Who were you before you started to learn how to shut your authentic self down and fit into the family image? But also, when you're out and about in your day-to-day life today, notice when you're at a store, what are you naturally drawn to? When you have a couple of hours to yourself, what are you naturally inclined to do with that time? When you're standing in front of a big menu at a restaurant, and you're reading all of the options, what are you naturally wanting to order before all of the shoulds start to come in and tell you what you should and shouldn't do? Really pay attention to that organic, natural response you have to different moments and start to get to know who you are at your core. I bet you'll find that your authentic self is absolutely delightful. Okay? Now, there's one person out there in this world who I absolutely adore and admire, and I think she can be a wonderful resource for you in this authentic self-exploration, and her name is Dr. Brené Brown. Now, for those of you who know me, you know that I love Dr. Brené Brown. If you're not familiar with Brené's work, I really want you to get acquainted with it. She has some fabulous books. She has fabulous videos on YouTube that you can watch. She has fabulous courses that you can take online. But she is all about helping people get to know their true, authentic, emotional selves and living from that space. So if you'd like some guidance in that area, I highly recommend researching her work and her books and pick some of those up and start reading them. I think you'll love them. Okay? So this week is all about starting to get in touch with your authentic self, getting to know who you are at your core, and really enjoying that process, because I guarantee the person inside, you're going to love her or him. Okay? All right. Have a wonderful week. We will be back together next week for a whole new topic for the month of May. I'm really, really excited about it. In the meantime, get to know yourself, enjoy the process, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.